Last week, on November 15th, Halo Infinite's multiplayer surprise dropped on PC and Xbox, and the world got a full taste of the first Halo game in 6 years. At first I was apprehensive. Although playing the technical test had given me a lot of optimism for how the game would play, I still had a lot of concerns about the weapon sandbox, the launch game modes, the number of maps, and more. Luckily, once I loaded up the game and jumped into big team battle, most of these concerns were alleviated. Before I jump into details, I'll go straight to my verdict. Halo Infinite is the best multiplayer has felt since Reach, and possibly even since 3. Though it has some rough patches and problems, in a day and age where most AAA games release as broken, buggy, over-monetized messes, Infinite's launch is pretty smooth. First, the good. I'm going to keep this stuff short and general because if I talked about every great thing about this game, I'd be here for a while. The gunplay, for one, feels really good. Most of the weapons are visually appealing and feel good to use, even if they aren't that powerful, and the audio for them is top-notch. Vehicles are really fun to use. Though their armor is a bit weak and their movement needs some tweaking, the weapons feel great and the crit mechanic leads to some hilarious moments. This should come as a surprise to no one, but the music is also amazing. The art style is really good so far. It returns to a lot of the stylistic elements of Halo 3 and upgrades it to a modern standard in terms of visual fidelity. Finally, one of the aspects I really like is the big team battle maps. In Halo 5, most of the developer maps were visually very similar, usually some variation of a desert, tundra, or military base, with the occasional Forerunner or Covenant installation thrown in there. While none of these locales are bad, and they can make for some really interesting maps like Sandtrap or Skyline, when there are so many of them that are so similar, they all tend to blend together. So far, Halo Infinite has a lot of visual variety, and I'm hoping that as more maps get added, this trend continues. Though this game has a lot to praise, there are also a lot of problems to be ironed out. Firstly, I'm pretty sure everyone and their dog has pointed out the problems with the slow progression and trickle of customization options. Some of this has already been addressed by 343, but this problem will only be solved with more armor and more skins being rewarded. Another obvious issue is the monetization. While Halo Infinite is much, much better than many of the other games out there in this regard, that doesn't mean the system doesn't detract from gameplay. However, monetization schemes are par for the course nowadays, and it's probably here to stay. While the game modes and maps we have are pretty good, there is a scarcity of them. So far, I've only encountered 5 game types: Slayer, Capture the Flag, Territories, Stockpile, and Oddball. And there are only 4 playlists. Classics like Infection, Fiesta, SWAT, and Heavies are absent right now, and there's no way to select between Slayer and Objective modes. To some extent, the system in MCC has probably made my expectations too high, and many games have even less options, but the current selection is still lackluster compared to Halo 5 and MCC. Another gripe, though this is more of a nitpick with the game, is the weapon sandbox. Halo Infinite has drastically changed the weapon offerings in the franchise, and while none of the new additions are bad, it comes at the cost of a lot of classics. Some of the most prominent ones are the saw, shotgun, beam rifle, carbine, fuel rod, all of the Promethean weapons, and more. In particular, I really miss stuff like the SMG and DMR. Part of this change is an effort to reduce redundancy in the sandbox, but I personally don't mind having multiple weapons that fill similar roles, as long as they're visually distinct and fun. The same criticism applies to the equipment. The ones we've got are great, especially the grapple shot and repulsor, but I'd be interested in seeing more variety through classics like the bubble shield, evade, and jetpack. The last issue I've had is one a lot of people have been talking about: the vehicle spawns. The heavy vehicles, especially the Banshee, Scorpion, and Wraith, spawn way too late in the matches to make a difference in most games. While I think the idea 343 is going for is sound, they need to adjust the match length if it is actually going to work. For Slayer, for example, Infinite could take a page from Reach's book and increase the victory requirement from 100 to 150 in Big Team Battle. That way, the heavy vehicles arrive in the third act of the match, but they still have enough time that players can actually use them and make a difference on the game. This would also help with the match pacing in general, since a Big Team Battle is now 12v12 instead of 8v8. I know that might have sounded overly critical, but I don't want it to overshadow the fact that I really do like this game. It is absolutely a return to form for the Halo franchise, and I am excited to see where this game will go in the future. If you haven't already checked it out, since it's free to play, I would recommend it. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about it for now, until the campaign releases. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great rest of your day.